Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our April Council meeting. I would now like Greg James to do a welcome to country.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe and my fellow councillors. So firstly, I pay my respects to our ancestors. I acknowledge our elders, both past, present and emerging. I would like to acknowledge the Yorta Yorta Nations and all its people whose land we meet on today. So on behalf of the Elders Council, the 16 family groups and the 8 respected tribes, I welcome you all here this afternoon to this wonderful land and country. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. We, Greater Shepparton City Council, acknowledge the Yorta Yorta peoples of the land which now comprises Greater Shepparton. We pay our respect to their tribal elders, we celebrate their continuing culture and we acknowledge the memory of their ancestors. I would also like to welcome Mr Chris Tydsall today in the absence of Peter Harriott. As noticed, this public meeting is being streamed live via our Facebook page and made available for public access on our website, along with the official minutes of this meeting. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, it is assumed that your consent is given in the event that your image is broadcast to the public. It is also assumed that your consent is given to the use and disclosure of any information that you share at the meeting, including personal or sensitive information, to any person who accesses those recordings of minutes. I would also like to welcome back the public to our gallery today. Governance principles. Council considers that the recommendations contained in this agenda gives effect to the overarching governance principles stated in section 9/2 of the Local Government Act 2020. These principles are printed and listed in the agenda items 1 to 9 on page 6. Apologies we haven't received. Councillors, do we have any declarations of conflict of interest that need to be declared today? No. Confirmation of minutes of the previous minutes, which is item 7. Is any item in the minutes opposed? Would a councillor like to move a motion? Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'll move that the minutes of the 15th of March 2022 council meeting as circulated be confirmed.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sarley.
I second that, Mayor O'Keefe.
Thank you very much. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Mr Tyson, we have public question time now. Item 8. The following public question was submitted to council in accordance with our governance rules from Rosalind Nags.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'll read the question. Why is it taking council staff so long to collate responses from the public with regard to the sale of the land of the Maud, Nixon and Edward Street car park, when the council staff could prepare a proposal to council for the sale of the land in just over 2 months? In response to that question, I understand submitters' interest in this proposal and the desire for submissions to council to be considered in a timely manner. However, significant community engagement events like this simply take time to properly assess the contents of submissions and for council officers to make an informed recommendation to council on a proposal. I'd like to outline the process for this community engagement process. Following the completion of the consultation period, council officers read through all submissions, including any early submissions received, and review submitters' verbal presentations to council, including any additional material provided to council at that briefing. Councillors also receive a full copy of submissions for their perusal. For this project, there is almost 2,000 pages of material and 4 to 5 hours of video footage, all of which must now be summarised in a conversation report that will articulate the content of the submissions and council officers' response to each item raised. Any submitters to engagement processes would naturally expect that the contents of their submissions would be properly understood and considered before council makes an informed decision on any proposal. This process allows for procedural fairness and natural justice for all submitters to this process. Given the number and far-reaching contents of submissions, additional work is now required. This includes further investigations and briefings of council. This will take additional time to address. Once the content of submissions is fully understood and these further investigations have been completed, council officers will then be in a position to finalise a council report on the proposed sale of the airspace above the car park for council's consideration. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the staff involved in this complex process. This has been very intense at times, and your professionalism and diligence is very much appreciated.
very much, Chris. And just in response to that as well, councillors have asked as a matter of priority, and we thank the council staff for doing things as quickly as possible. Councillors, item 9, deputations and petitions. We had nil received. On page 8, item 10.1, Greater Shepparton Sports Hall of Fame Policy and Amendments to Sports Hall of Fame Nomination Guidelines. There is a recommendation on page 8. Would a council like to move a motion? Councillor Brophy.
Sorry. Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I would certainly like to move that recommendation that that the council, 1, adopt the Greater Shepparton Sports Hall of Fame nomination policy, 76 point poll 2, as attached to this report, and 2, adopt the addition of the following eligibility criterion to the Greater Shepparton Sports Hall of Fame nomination criteria, that being, due to the uniqueness of the Australian football, AFL, and having no international equivalency, consideration for inclusion in the Greater Shepparton Sports Hall of Fame as a player will be limited to selection in the announcement annual AFL All-Australian team or winning the Brownlow medal.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'll second that recommendation.
Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. So just putting that forward, this is about tidying up. We had the induction a couple of months ago, I think on about the 4th of February this year, an incredible induction of 26 other nominations, which included a ceremony here at Eastbank, and their contributions to sport in the Hall of Fame, the Honour Roll and the Junior Honour Roll, which represented it. As part of that, the adoption in regards to the AFL being the uniqueness that it is, that there is no international equivalent. Now, some may argue that Gaelic football is, and there is a sort of a cross-blending of the football codes to try and accommodate an international series, but it's not recognised internationally as a particular type of football. So being an All-Australian certainly qualifies for that, and winning the Brownlow medal qualifies for that as well. So I'd certainly put that recommendation forward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. In following up what Councillor Brophy's talked about, I'd just like to give a note of appreciation to Don Kilgour, Margot Coscolane and Darryl Butch, Peter Holland, as well as David Booth and our team from Council in administering this very important public function. And I think it's important, doubly important, that the Aussie Rules has a part, especially at the highest level, and I think it's a no-brainer. This has been worked on for a couple of years, and we've got to say that the guidelines really are, I suppose, a bit of a moving feast as we get more experienced in it, but I think we're nearly there now. I think we've encompassed just about everything, and I think with the inclusion of Australian rules, best and fairest, or All-Australian, I think just about tops it. Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would a councillor like to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 13, item 10.2, Greater Shepparton Sports Hall of Fame Advisory Committee, appointment of committee members and updated terms of reference. Would a councillor like to move a motion?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'd like to move the recommendation 10.2 on page 13, Greater Shepparton Sports Hall of Fame Advisory Committee, appointment of committee members and updated terms of reference.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Brophy.
I second that, Mayor O'Keefe.
Councillor James, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'll read out the recommendation and in the first part of that, which is that the council adopt the revised Greater Shepparton Sports Hall of Fame Advisory Committee terms of reference as attached to this report. The council periodically call for nominations from local residents for Sports Hall of Fame Advisory Committee as positions on the committee become vacant or term has expired. Nominations for the community representatives positions were advertised from the Friday the 5th of November 2021 and closed at 5 p.m. Friday 5th of February 2022. A total of 8 nominations were received. To enable each individual to serve on the committee, an amendment to the terms of reference to increase the number of community members from up to 5 to up to 8 Mayor, on this particular recommendation, has been proposed. The proposed membership for the committee will comprise of up to 11 members for a 2-year term. That includes Greater Shepparton City Council, and that's up to 2 councillors, and currently we have Councillor Dobson and Councillor Brophy, who are the 2 representatives. The Valley Sport has 1 representative, and the council and community members will now increase from 5 up to 8 representatives. The proposed change to terms of reference includes the development of a nomination process, the eligibility criteria and revocation of award guidelines, the change membership of community reps from 5 to 8, voting rights, committee members entitled to 1 vote each. If equal votes arise, the chair has a second vote. Council staff to provide advice to the committee only, and they do not have voting rights. So that was the first part of the recommendation. Mayor O'Keefe, the second part of the recommendation, and I'll read that out. The appointment of the following community member representatives to the Greater Shepparton Sports Hall of Fame Advisory Committee for a 2-year term commencing on 19th of April 2022 and concluding on 19th of April 2024. And the 8 members are Don Kilgar, Margot Koscielny, Daryl Butcher, Peter Holland, Jackie Hudson, Tyler Marr, Craig Potter and Dennis Myers. So congratulations to those community members, Mayor, and it's great. Their efforts on the panel will be greatly appreciated from the next 2 years.
Thank you,
Mayor.
James. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Just reiterating what Councillor James said. Terrific to be able to increase the amount of members on this particular committee, and with their broad experience and their networks across the different sports, it'll only make this committee, far better than what it has been. Of course, the induction ceremony we had originally was back in August 2017. Then in 2019 we had another one, and of course, as I alluded to before, in February this year. So we're building up a great sports hall of fame. And to include these particular people there, now can I just make a special mention, and I know Councillor Dobson did before, to Don Kilgour as well, the MC who obviously was able to bring to life the stories of the people behind the nominations. It was just incredible. Via his interviewing technique, each recipient and the detail that he went to find out certain information, it was really incredible, and I think culminating, of course, in without picking out any individual ones, but there was a posthumous one for the late Jared Lyle, and of course Ian Bull accepted on as a personal friend on behalf of Jared Lyle and family, because unfortunately Bryony was in isolation, and there wasn't very many dry eyes left in the house. It was just absolutely fantastic. But of course, Don, Margot, Daryl and Peter have been on that committee for a little bit of period of time, and this was a great transition to see some people with the calibre of Jackie Hudson, Tyler Marr, Craig Potter and Dennis Myers to be able to come in and perhaps take the baton and, dare I say it in sport, take the baton and move on with this particular committee, particularly with the new updated terms of reference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would a councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried and opposed. Councillors, we now go to page 18, item 11.1, the March 2022 monthly financial report. There's also a recommendation on page 18. Would a councillor like to move a motion? Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'll move that the council receive and note the March 2022 monthly financial report.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second now? Councillor Doolan. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Just a couple of interesting parts that I pull out every month that really gives me some comfort on the basis that maintaining the budget correctly is one of the council's responsibilities. But the adjusted underlying surplus as a percentage of underlying revenue is 15.69% is actual, as against the forecast of 8.37. So we're above that mark. But the other interesting part that I see is the loans and borrowings, that our actual borrowings as a percentage of rates is 26.1%, as against the year or the adopted budget of of 39.97, but it's still within that band. The working capital again is 206.72%, which is current assets over current liabilities, and again that's within the target band. One of the other interesting things that I always look for, as everybody knows, is our investments, currently at $34 million, basically in A1 plus A1 or A2, plus the GMCU, which we support to the tune of $2 million a year as a deposit. But the good thing about that is that our policies are now looking at more and more green-backed investments, and we'll be going into that into the future. Our sundry debtors are at this stage 57.14% of all debts, and that's $976,000. So that's in pretty good shape. I won't go into all the others, the figures are all there, but that's just some highlights to say that the operation is going along smoothly, and it's also interesting to note that we're still, and we don't like to keep on mentioning we're coming out of COVID, but I think we've got to be aware of where COVID sits. In fact, our CEO is not with us today because all of a sudden he's contracted COVID over the weekend. So it's hitting, and it's hit this council particularly well. Well, not well, but particularly hard, particularly well, to the fact that, and also when you look at our front of house people, we've had some problems there with COVID related and also some other problems. So, we're doing all right, we're doing well, and I think we've just got to keep on this conservative basis on which we're acting at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Dobson. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. I think no further comments. Councillor Dobson has captured everything pretty well, and as Councillor Dobson has said, financial indicators, they are all tracking well, and it's all satisfactory.
Okay, thank you very much. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would a councillor like to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, now go to page 21, item 11.2, forecast review for 2021-2022. There is also a recommendation on page 21. Would a councillor please move a motion? Councillor Abdullah?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I would like to move the recommendation on page 21 as a motion, which says that the council receive and note the revised forecasts identified by the attached 2021-2022 Q3 forecast review.
Very much. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Starley.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe.
Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Just very quickly, as we all know, that this is a requirement under the Local Government Act 2020 to present a quarterly budget, and the process basically involves the managers to review the adopted budget with respect to the actual figures. So the report has been presented, and just quickly, I just want to highlight that in this forecast review, it appears that COVID-19 is still a factor in the continued decrease in user fee and charges. We are seeing that Equamos, Riverlinks, all of that, the user fee is continuing to decrease. We do have, as a part of Q3 review, we have an operating surplus of $21.32 million, which is, and the increase of this increase of $7.8 million is mainly due to the early receipt of 75% of federal government's financial assistance and grants, which came in April 2022. And other factors towards this operating surplus include favorable variances in our employee costs, materials and services, and depreciation expenses. Another highlight is that the underlying operating result is projected to be an operating surplus of $1.36 million compared to the Q2 forecast, which was an operating deficit of $15.3 million. So it is a healthy indicator. With respect to capital works project, capital works expenditure has decreased by $7.16 million since the last adopted Q2 forecast. And it is mainly due to the projects that have been rebudgeted to next financial year. And I was going through the report and found this particular section very interesting, where it has a list of all the capital works project where the capital work expense has actually decreased. And some of the reasons behind this decrease are, number one, projects that are budgeted to next financial year, and then there are projects that are not going ahead. There are projects where the expenses have reduced to reflect submitted tenders, and projects that are completed within the original budget and the amount. So it is very pleasing to see that there are indeed some projects that are completed within the original budget. And for example, I'll quote cost growth 2 landfill cell 4 capping, where the capital expense decreased by $338,000. Project was completed within the original budget estimates. So very nice to see all of that. Coming back to cash and cash equivalent forecast, the Q3 forecast review shows that the ending cash balance remains steady at $19.13 million. So that's all about the Q3 forecast review. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sally, would you like to
Thank you.
speak to the motion?
Yes, very briefly, very detailed, Councillor Abdul. It's always easy following you after this. So, but I will just highlight, because you did mention about the user charges, and I did raise this a couple of weeks ago regarding the commercial waste volumes at Cosgrove landfill, which is, effectively cost us the 1.1, and that probably comes off the back, which most of you can recall. Last year we made the changes around budget to increase the fee to dispose of your waste there from commercial operators, which obviously was going to have a flow-on effect, and clearly that's coming out now where it's costing us financially. And the question I guess I ask now, which we'll see, is the 1.1 going to justify the waste that we're not taking in, and effectively are we pushing that waste elsewhere? So are we really trying to fix the problem we were seeking to do, which was to minimise waste going there, but we're effectively moving it on elsewhere? We have a substantial waste facility that can cater, I believe, for many regional towns surrounding Greater Shepparton. I think we need to leverage that asset, because the 1.1 to our turnover could have a long-term impact if we can't see the benefit of why we're shifting waste elsewhere. So I think I'm keen to see how that eventuates over the coming year, and if it's been a beneficial decision. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would a councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 24, item 11.3, the Greater Shepparton City Council 2022-2023 draft budget. Would a councillor like to move the motion? Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I move that the council endorse the 2022-23 draft budget as presented for the purposes of section 94 of the Local Government Act 2020. Authorise the Chief Executive Officer to give public notice on the preparation of the 22-23 draft budget, and stipulate that any persons may make a written submission that must be received by no later than 5 p.m. Thursday the 26th of May, and note that a hearing of submissions will be held on Tuesday the 31st of May 2022.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wheeler. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I've got the draft budget in front of me, and the draft budget is some 119 pages long, and it details in minute detail the charges, and how we're going to get the money coming in and how we're going to spend it going out. And I'd like to congratulate the staff who have put this together over quite a period of time. It's not an easy thing to do. I suppose all the departments have got to get in and put their ask of the budget, and then somebody's got to say yes or no. But a couple of things that I'd just like to point out, and one of them is that this motion actually just gives us the right to send the budget out for public consultation. Now, at the end of that public consultation, there may be no change, or public submissions may come in and they make changes. In fact, if some of the councillors want to make some changes, they can, whether they think that the rate should go up or down, or whether we should include or take out accordingly. But the budget proposes a 1% rate, which is 0.75% rate decrease under the maximum that can be stipulated within the state government parameters. And I think what we're demonstrating here is that we're taking an even-handed approach. We're understanding that COVID is still around and some of the aftermath of that. But we've also got to understand that if we haven't got the money coming in proper amounts, that it's very hard to keep up a capital works budget, in fact, to run the place efficiently. The draft budget proposes a 34.6 million accounting surplus, it's an accounting surplus, isn't it? And that can change, and allows for a capital works of 49.77. And I think that's considerably lower than what it's been in previous years, but this year we don't have, of course, the SAM building and other buildings that have come on board. Hopefully over the next 12 months or 2 years, we'll be bringing into account the new sports pavilion. I again stress, Mayor O'Keefe, that public submissions will be sought, and we just don't want people to say, oh, well, I've had a look at it, but it's the public's money, and the public should come in and say to us, look, you're doing that right or you're doing that wrong. And the budget and the submissions are from the 22nd of April 2022, 26th to the 26th of May, and at that time we will then see what our ratepayers think, and it'll give councillors time to reassess, if they think it's necessary, to reassess some of the areas that I know have been in discussion. Not all of us agree on the whole budget. I mean, that would be silly to say that we're all one and all. I think some have got an emphasis on that area, some have got an emphasis on that area. But at the end of the day, we've got to get a consensus to take this forward. So I commend the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Quickly, once again, Councillor Dobson has captured things very well, and effectively this is a procedural motion under the Local Government Act 2020, and it is to endorse the draft budget to release for community consultation. As Councillor Dobson has highlighted, it's a very tedious process, and it required council staff to undertake enormous amount of work, and for which I would like to say thanks to our staff and the leadership involved in the draft budget preparation. The process this year was slightly, had an additional step whereby a pre-draft budget consultation was started end of last year. And since then, up until now, councillors had been engaged over this period. Councillor officers had brought various reports and various sections of the budget for discussions over a series of briefings. It's fair to say that there are many aspirations and passion projects that were examined, and which would perhaps some of them needs more examination. And as Councillor Dobson has said, it's sort of, it's impossible to have a wish list of all of us incorporated in the budget, but the discussions that we have had, they were healthy, they were informative, and there was some consensus. Wherever there was some consensus, those ideas were reflected in the draft budget. However, there were some ideas and proposals that needed more time and data, and I'm very keen to follow up on those ideas post this budget cycle. Obviously, the draft budget was developed under some key financial management principles. Some of them include, number one, to deliver a financially sustainable budget. It's very important to make sure that our organization, which is a big organization, is sustainable over a number of years. So that principle was applied. Then the principle of responsibly funding the maintenance of our existing assets was applied. And of course, it also applied the principle of considering the use of borrowings, responsible borrowings, as a legitimate and responsible financial management tool. But as we have noticed, there is no borrowing in this financial year, in the next financial year, under this budget. And what else? Yes, so of course the rating differentials, there has been no change in the 2022-2023 draft budget. Although I personally feel that there is a room for review, especially in derelict buildings category. Given the data that we have received for this category and we examine that, it perhaps needs more examination in the next year's cycle, budget cycle. The budget, this draft budget also highlights a breakdown of capital investments in small towns, a list of projects, so that is very handy. And I just, in the end, I would like to encourage the community members to please to consider this budget and tell us what you would like to include or change in this budget.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Spinks.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Before I speak, Mayor Keefe, I would like to please foreshadow our motion. Thank you very much. So thank you, Mayor. As a brief opening, I do want to commend the council staff on the time and effort involved in putting this document together each year. Also on the inclusion of more funding for our footpath connectivity programs and the inclusion of a number of minor projects to be delivered. And I strongly encourage all community members and groups to put in your submissions for anything you think has been missed or should be more of a priority within the budget. But I am speaking today against the draft budget as I do not support it in its current state. I would argue that the 1% rate rise proposed was a compromise suggested between a 0% and a full 1.75% rate rise, which is admirable in its intent, but unfortunately has fallen into the trap of trying to please many and instead pleasing none. If this current motion fails to pass, then I will be moving a foreshadowed motion that asks the draft budget to incorporate the following changes: a 0% rate rise, the inclusion of one complimentary tip ticket per residential property with the cost to be included in the waste charge, and for the removal of the derelict building differential. These have been a common theme that has come from beyond the campaign into every discussion we've ever had, and so I think that this is the time to have this conversation and to bring it to the table. I argue for a 0% rate rise because it is something that was I think brought to the forefront. You know, everyone talks about 0% rate rises all the time. It will happen every single year, but it was brought to the forefront during COVID. But I think not because of COVID, but because of the perfect storm that it created. So it's the combination of our community trying to balance who our community are and what they need, and the reality that costs continue to rise. So I would argue that we need one more year of a 0% rate rise to try and just redress the balance. And then obviously it's not something that would continue every year. It's not possible. It's not financially sustainable, but I just don't think we're done yet. So I propose a 0% rate rise. I argue for the inclusion of the tip ticket because this is a conversation that's been floating around for a decade. I mean, it just keeps coming up. And ultimately, with all of the data that we're provided, and I appreciate all of the work going on behind the scenes to try and bring us the most accurate information, most accurate financial figures, the reality is it's hypothetical. We have tried one version of it with the weekend of free tip, but I just don't think you can compare that fairly. It wasn't the same model. And there was certainly an awful lot of learnings taken from that I think can be, attempted again. I don't think that it needed to die with that. I think it's something that our community is calling out for and that we can meet this need for in a tempered way. So by proposing one complimentary tip ticket, we're essentially giving it a trial period to make sure that our organisation can handle this and also to see how our community respond to it. Will it be 100% uptake? Will it be 20%?
Would you like an extension, Councillor Smith?
Yes, please. Thank you. And so ultimately, it's about having a go. I think our community would support it, and by including it within the waste charge, we can still achieve the 0% rate rise. And while there may be a slight increase to the waste charge, it is us genuinely, as a ratepayer, genuinely paying for another service to be delivered. We can see a direct outcome to that. And finally, I argue to remove the derelict building differential. I think it was very well intended. We aimed to get out there and sort of clean up our town, and I think many among the community would have supported that. But after a year of doing that work behind the scenes from our awesome council staff, the reality is we put out a really great net, but we caught all the wrong fish. We caught all of these really just community members that may or may not be struggling a little bit at home. And I think for us to then come down on them is quite frankly wrong. I think that by including that, we're missing the mark entirely of what the intention of it was. So to continue for the sake of a few, but to harm the many, seems absolutely the wrong way to go about it. And so those are the three things that I'd be proposing in a foreshadowed motion. I know that through the consultation process and through further reports coming back to us, such as complementary parking that we'll see in the next month or so, that there may be further work and inclusions to be made, which may in fact justify the 1% or even a 1.75% rate rise, the full cap. And I'm very open to making those changes as appropriate when the time comes. But today I am voting on whether I support this version of the budget document, and I don't. Thank you.
Very much. Would any councillor wish to speak for the motion? Councillor Brophy?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. There's always a lot of chatter when the budget is forecasted, and ratepayers are really interested in two things. What will the rate rise be? Will there be a rate rise? Or, really, what is it in it for them? You know, is it for, say, an individual, or is it for their community that they represent? Last year, successfully, the base rate was kept at 0%. There was no increase from council, and that was very admirable. Of course, property values can go up, and therefore, you know, rates may increase there, but the base rate remained the same as 0. The draft is just that. The Finance Department keep us updated on last year's performance, the current month that we're working on, and reports come through on that, and forecasts, as we've heard for the quarterly forecasts. So it's a pretty solid job that they do on that. What they have presented is a workable draft. And that's the important word, workable. And that's what we'll be working on over the next couple of months. So we will await the public's feedback for consideration. Last year, many put forward some things to be included, and they were adopted into the budget. And so we will wait on a number of reports that are coming in as well. As per my notice of motion back in February at the OCM on complementary parking, to which a report will be available and within the next month, and will enable us to consider whether we incorporate that into the budget, if appropriate, or not. Councillors collectively and individually have a wish list for consideration, just like members of the public. So it may or may not be included. Rates may change. It may be 1%, it may be 0%, it may be 1.75%. It could be any of those three or other. So please put forward your asks. Some of it will be in this year's forecasted budget that we're looking at. Some could be in the following years. Or it could be foreshadowed in years to come, which still may be needed to include some preliminary design work coming up. This is one of our biggest roles in local government. We value the public's input, and we value our fellow councillors' input as well. It is a draft and it is workable. I'd like to just also pay thanks to who had our previous finance guru, Matt Jarvis, as well, who worked really hard on this particular budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Councillor Summer?
Thank you, Mayor. On the outset, I would like to say that staff have worked very hard to present us with a conservative budget that is under the rate cap. So I can see how there's a compromise there, but I have to agree, trying to please everyone ends up pleasing nobody. I don't think we've done enough as individual councillors in terms of stepping up for the people who voted for us. This opportunity of a budget comes up only once a year. So this is our chance to fight for those election promises such as tip tickets and being fair to people who are disadvantaged and offering lower rate rises. Today is the day to do it without significant risk because, as Councillor Brophy pointed out, this is only a draft going to consultation. So this is the time. If we wait until the end of consultation to introduce big ticket items, we will be criticised for not consulting enough. It has to be today if we're going to include any of these things. We only have one budget left this term, so time is vital. It goes very quickly, and there's absolutely, you should not feel comfortable if you think something will get in next year, because it invariably does not. So it takes a lot of bravery to go against the grain, especially in the public arena. So I would like to commend Councillor Spinks for her courage in foreshadowing a perfectly sound and community-pleasing motion that I can't see anything wrong with whatsoever, so I do hope that it's given proper consideration. It is not impossible to have a wish list considering what we've achieved in the past. We have projected budget surplus that's almost doubled from what we have right now, and a projected capital spend of 50 million, which is almost halved from what we have right now. And that's indicative of the large big ticket project, Sam Art Gallery and a bunch of other things, but it does show how well this council can manage money and big ticket items and get us back on track. So I'm glad we're coming to the end of the SAM expenses, and it should even out for future years. And surely in there, we can find room for services that the community wants and need. Tip tickets invariably come up every year. The zero rate rise I would support until we are back in line with comparable councils. I'm pleased we have not drawn down on borrowings. There was $12 million sitting there, but instead of drawing down, we tightened our efficiencies in materials and services under the expectations that borrowing should never be used to prop up liquidity. The argument in the report against reducing rates is problematic. We're told there's been a loss of 13 million over 10 years due to compounding. If that's okay, thank you. A $13 million loss over 10 years due to compounding because of the zero rate rise, but that same argument could be said for any hypothetical starting point in terms of finances, so that doesn't make a lot of sense. Our rates remain at the upper echelon of comparable councils, mostly due to previous council's policy of no borrowings, but now we do have over 20% of the rates in borrowings, as well as arguably high rates. So I would support a zero rate increase until we are back in line with those councils. Look, all in all, I think what Councillor Spinks has put forward has a lot of merit, has a lot of bravery. It would draw very little criticism from the public. It puts it in our draft document so we can get that feedback, and if need be, we can remove whatever it is that could be causing angst. But personally, it's a nice budget, but I think we should be doing more.
Thank you very much. Would a council wish to speak for the motion? Councillor Starling.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Yeah, some really good comments from my fellow councillors, obviously for and against, and I really support Councillor Spink's thoughts. And we've had a brief chat about it as well, and it's hard to argue with what you're proposing, and I guess timing comes into it as well. And I just want to highlight that even this afternoon or tonight after the meeting, some of us are going to be heading over to Taktura to talk about community priorities, and that's going to come out a lot more through the course of this consultation period. The 1% increase, is it a balanced view? What do the community expect us to deliver on? Is it about us just achieving a perfect story for them over the course of, our term, or is it about setting up a really sustainable and strong council for many terms and years to come on? Where does our priority sit? Do I agree with the tip tickets and the proposed complimentary car park? I mean, yeah, who wouldn't? The reality is, who wouldn't agree with those? The hardest thing is just with the complimentary car parking. It wouldn't be appropriate, I think, at this given time to include it in any type of budget until a report is given. Again, I highlighted the fact that the timing isn't perfect right now. That will come to us in the next month. So I'm actually really relaxed and confident in a way about this budget that we have a strong enough appetite around the table for change. And I think it's important to get an understanding of what that change is. And the draft budget is effectively that. It's a draft. And we want community feedback. We want to hear from community groups outside of, your main centres, Shepparton, Murchison and Expenditure. We want to hear from you as often as we possibly can. And then that gets collated together. And as a group of councillors, we try and find a compromise of where we want to go and where we want to take this organisation and council as well. So I cannot stress enough, I know it's been mentioned, I genuinely want to hear from the community and how high those expectations are or how low. We need to hear from you. We've got some really good ideas on the table. Let's get them together and let's be excited about seeing a draft change, because that's the purpose of it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would a councillor wish to speak for the motion? Councillor James.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I just wanted to speak that this is a workable document, and it is a draft budget ready to be ratified by inclusions and consultations, of course, by the all-important our interested parties, our ratepayers, and etc. This draft budget has been prepared prepared in accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Act in 2020, and consideration of the impact of what COVID has had from previous years, from 2019 onwards. And we also must not forget the possibility of an outbreak in the future for our COVID too as well. And I think that, our planning department has incorporated that into our planning process. The draft budget reflects the second year of our adopted financial plan from 2021 to 2023, and also includes our council plan too as well, which was fairly detailed, community consultation, and we have to take that in consideration too as well. There are some inclusions that councillors would like to see included, and as Councillor Dobson did point out, all the councillors didn't agree with that, and that's healthy. I think that's healthy, that does occur. My wish list, of course, when I was campaigning was that I would like to see free parking, I'd like to see tickets, and I'd like to see curbside rubbish removal and a whole range of things too as well. I'd like to think in my 4 years I will achieve some of those things. I may not, I may, but we will get there. But I'd like to, just to say that, I thank Councillor Spinks for her comments made. Support the 0% increase, and I think we can achieve that. But I look forward to the consultations. I look forward to the responses back, the all-important consultation back with our community, so that I can sit there and I can make an informed and proper and right decision, which will be suitable for all of our community, and also and complement the work that our staff have done over. And it's it isn't just something that has worked. This is a working document, it's a budget plan which has been worked on quite some time, and considerable planning has gone into that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Any other councillors to speak for the motion? Just on closing, I'll have some final comments. Look, it's a wish list, and we all have different priorities, but we also have very similar priorities. Of course, we'd all love a zero rate. Well, I won't say rise, there's not a rate rise, a zero rate cost. But we do have a wish list, and we have to really think about the priorities of our community. We are the voice of our community, and we need to be listening to what the priorities are. Tip tickets, absolutely. Free parking over this side, absolutely. We're all sort of on similar pages in that respect, but it's a prioritising of what's important right now. After experiencing a couple of years like we've never seen before, we want the community to be well looked after. Does that mean free parking? Does it mean free tip badges? What does it look like, this final list? And that's what we're reaching out to the community to give us more guidance, because we should not be making these final decisions. We should be representing the decisions from our community so we can make informed decisions. So it's not about us. It's about our community, and it's about us making the right decisions on their behalf. So thank you, Sam, for putting that up, but I think it is early days, and as we've said, it is a draft. We are waiting for the free parking report to come back in. To throw that in right now without that information, it's too difficult. So, hats off to the council staff for being patient. Chris, I know you've been a very big part of that. Thank you. It's a challenge, I will say to the community. It's very challenging. It's a very difficult time because we all feel so passionately about doing the right thing for our community with the money that we spend for them. So we will do that, and we'll do our due diligence to make sure that what we do ask is that you please have your say. Don't whinge after the fact. Please tell us leading into this what you want so we can sit down and really think about that. Of course, we have some aspirations already from you, but we need to make sure that you are involved in this process, and everyone around the table really wants to see that happen. All right, on that note.
Do I get a right of reply?
Right of reply, thank you, Councillor Dobson.
Again, congratulations both to Councillor Summer putting up an alternative view, and Councillor Spinks for putting up an alternative view, some of which I agree and some I can't, but that's the way we all rumble. But at the end of the day, I can just say this to you, that anybody that runs a commercial operation, you have your money coming in and your money going out. You try and get more money coming in than money going out. That's one exercise. The second exercise is the money that's going out, is that being used efficiently? Is it being used for the best of the community? Could we do better with that? And that's, I guess, where budgets can change from time to time. So it doesn't worry me particularly that we perhaps we might look like we have more rates coming in than comparable, but it's what we do with them. And I think, what we've done over the last 12 months, and I go back only 2 or 3 weeks ago when we had the show on the Lake Victoria there. I mean, it was fantastic for the whole of the community. Probably 10 or 15,000 people turned up for a free event. That's what we can do if we budget correctly. So the things that you described, I think, got to be in the melting pot, sure. I'm not convinced that myself at this stage, and you can understand that's the correct way to go about it. A good, healthy debate, and the debate will continue. And I don't want anybody to think that we can't make decisions, but I think it's beholden on us to listen to what the community's got to say, get a little bit more information, then let's attack it over the next 4 weeks. Thanks.
Very much. We will now go to the vote.
Clarification. Closing comments, should they be introducing new information?
Well, aren't you happy with Councillor Summer?
Closing comments should only address what's been said and not introduce new debate.
What aren't you happy with, Councillor?
No, I liked everything he said. I was just curious. I know if I ever have to have a right of reply.
I think you're right. I don't think you can introduce new information. Correct. Yes, that's correct. You're not to introduce new information. Right, we'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried.
Division, please, Madam Mayor. Oh, Mayor.
All those in favour, Councillor Dodson, Councillor Dula, Councillor O'Keefe, Councillor Brophy, Councillor James and Councillor Sarley. Those against, Councillor Springs and Councillor Burnsummer. Motion carried. Councillors, we now go to page 30, item 11.4, Investment and Cash Management Policy Update. There is also a recommendation on page 30. Would a councillor like to move the motion? Everyone's catching their breath after that.
Yeah.
Okay, would someone like to move item 11.4?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'd like to move the recommendation to a motion that the council adopt the revised investment and cash management policy 34.1 version 3 as attached to this report.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, Councillor Brophy?
I'll second that, Mayor O'Keefe.
Councillor Springs, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Just briefly, because I won't do justice to this, but essentially this is changing our ability to invest in green term deposits and put our money into environmentally sort of sustainable and greener investments was pretty much only hindered by this policy, and not in a bad way at all. And this is simply tightening that up, loosening that up so we can do more of it. And you know, everybody out there knows we spend a lot of time talking about our climate action stuff and all the green things, and I'm certainly the first one out there yelling. And this essentially puts our money where our mouth is. This is backing that up. We have, as any local government organisation is, we have a fair bit of money that occasionally is waiting to be spent. It's not extra money or anything, it's simply waiting to be used for allocated projects. And while it is waiting, we have an opportunity to put it into an investment, as any of us would with any of our money. And this is about how we choose where we put it. So the revised policy allocates essentially a priority list or a preference list of where these can go. It is, from what I understand of it, and I'm not the finance one around the room, but it's very financially stable because you have all of the options. It doesn't lock us out of anything or into anything, and is just a way of using our money for a little bit of good out there and also within the organisation. And this policy is making the changes we needed to do. And I will say, not that I'm taking any credit for this at all, but I have been asking about this for a little while, and council staff have said they're going to bring it back, and they absolutely did, and this is the result of it, and I'm super happy to see it in here. So very supportive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Pretty much a one-liner. This is a very sound investment policy. It is prudent and it is a socially conscious management regime. Well done on putting that together. It ticks off all of the things that Councillor Spinks said before: green term deposits, green bond principles, environmental, social, and the investment products from institutions that do not fund fossil fuel projects. So a massive big tick. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would a councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Dula?
Thank you. Just another one-liner. After Council declared the climate emergency in 2020, I think this policy update was a very natural next step, and this is very much in line with what Council is aiming to do, and after declaring that climate change emergency. So I'm really pleased that finally the policy has been updated, and we are moving towards a greater utilization of sustainable investments. So it's a balance between financial returns and our environmental returns. So I think we have kind of achieved that balance, and looking forward to reaping the rewards of this investment policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 35, item 11.5, contracts awarded under delegation for March 2022. There is also a recommendation on page 35. Would a councillor like to move a motion? Councillor James?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'd like to move the recommendation 11.5 on page 35, the contracts awarded under delegation March 2022.
Would you like to read out the recommendation or just note it?
Yeah, I can read it if you like. The recommendation is, it's in three parts. Note the contracts awarded under delegation by the Chief Executive Officer pursuant to a formal tender process for the reporting period. Number 2, note the contracts awarded under delegated authority by the Chief Executive Officer, Director or Manager pursuant to a detailed quotation process for the reporting period. And 3, note the request for tender and advertised but not yet awarded.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Brophy?
I second that, Mayor O'Keefe.
Thank you very much. Councillor James, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. It's basically pretty well straightforward. Under the heading number 1, the contracts awarded by Chief Executive Officer, there are 2 contracts with significant amounts, and they include the Murchison Men's Shed and the South Down Precinct and Yakka Basin Landscaping Project. Under the heading number 2, there's contracts awarded by the CEO, Director or Manager. There are 5 contracts awarded, and they're shared in around Shepparton, Katandra and Tatura. And under heading number 3, request for tenders advertised but not yet awarded, there are 8 contracts involving upgrades, repairs and maintenance, and I'm sure that those tenders will go towards some of the issues that we have around the town. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Very briefly, just a couple of points there. One being the construction of the Murchison Men's Shed. Fantastic, really good to see that. That's been awarded. That's absolutely brilliant. Also, going outside Shepparton as well. So the Katandra West, the stormwater drainage out there, I remember during the campaign, that was pointed out to me numerous times by local residents in regards to that. And also the repair of the Katandra Hall, which is set out for tender. Good to see some movement in regards to that. So the people out of Katandra West will be very happy to see some progress made with both of those things. And also very pleasing again to see locally awarded tenders going to businesses that are local.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would a councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 39, item 11.6, the Audit and Risk Management Committee Chair Biannual Activity Report. There is also a recommendation on page 39. Would the council like to move a motion? Councillor Jewell?
I would like to move the motion, the recommendation on page 39 as a motion that the council note the Audit and Risk Management Committee Chair Biannual Activities Report up to 30th October 2021.
Do I have a seconder? Someone would like to second that? Councillor Springs? Councillor Jewell, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you. So quickly, as we know that that the Audit and Risk Management Committee assists council in the governance oversight. It's a significant committee, and because it does some very important work. This biannual report is in addition to the minutes of the committee meeting that are regularly tabled at council meeting for voting. And the Audit and Risk Management Committee has independent members, they are external to the organization, and we also have the mayor and one councillor representative sit on this committee. So this whole arrangement, it ensures the objectivity of the assessment of council's governance matters. So this report informs us that the council management had presented several reports to the Audit and Risk Management Committee in that period and ending October 2021, and it highlighted a number of actions and initiatives that were taken by management. Some of the reports that were presented included the insurance claims, disaster recovery, CEO report, OHS and work cover, which is a very important report, and OHS risks, and some other reports. The Chair's report also indicates the arrangements around internal audit, and it was indicated that in the internal audit, there were no extreme or high rated findings that were identified, which basically points towards the sound controls that are in place by council for these areas that are reviewed. Then this chair report also tells us about the external audit process, and the chair's comments says that the audit process identified 4 low-rated findings in the final management letter, which is a part of this whole external audit process, but there were no significant weaknesses that were identified during the audit. So, which really it demonstrates that council's continuous improvement performance in the efficient and effective preparation of the financial statements as a part of external audit. And overall, I would just say that the chair's report is providing this council the level of comfort and confidence regarding its matters, which is very pleasing to note. So I would like to say thanks to the chair and also the committee members for their contribution in this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Spinks, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? The councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 44, item 11.7, reappointment of independent members of the Audit and Management Committee. There is also a recommendation on page 44. Would a councillor like to move the motion? Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'd like to move the recommendation that the council, 1, approve the reappointment of David Corton and Goran Mitrevsky as independent members of the Audit and Risk Management Committee for the second 3-year term, concluding on the 1st of May 2025, and the 2, approve the reappointment of Goran Mitrevsky to the position of Chair of the Audit and Risk Committee for the next 12 months, concluding on the 1st of May 2023.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Dobson. Thank you very much. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. I'm very pleased to see that Goran has been put forward again to be the chair, and both David and Goran being on it for their second term as well. The public want to know that we're in safe hands in terms of finance and risk, and this committee is vitally important to us. The credentials of the people that are on the committee, their professionalism, their attention to detail, and their probing questions is unquestionable. I've had the privilege of being on that particular committee, and I can really see where they're going with it and the questions that they ask. It's all about the community and public interests, and what they work to do is that they, as councillors, we're there for the community, and we're there for the public interests. And from the finance and risk side of things, they then use that community and public interest, and they put an executive magnifying glass and scrutinise our risks and financials with a great scrutiny, I guess that's the word. This committee provides us with assurance, and it also provides us with a safety net going forward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, just briefly, because Councillor Brophy has summed up pretty well, but I'm pretty interested in the depth of the qualification and experience of the chair, which I won't go into the whole summary that's here, but it tells me that the committee is in very good hands, and it is a very important matter for council, because it's really an external look at what we're doing. Nobody's there with any axe to grind except good management, and it's terrific that we can have confidence in that committee.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor speak against the motion? Would a councillor wish to speak to the motion? Just a final comment from me. I'm actually really looking forward to continuing to work with Goran and David. They've done an outstanding job, and they make a very interesting and quite often in-depth, complicated committee very simple to follow and understand. So they do some great work, and we're really appreciative of it. All right, we'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we'll now go to page 48, item 11.8, Council Allowances 2022. Would a councillor like to move the motion? Councillor James?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'd like to move the recommendation 11.8 on page 48, and I'll read the recommendation out, that the council note the allowance payable to mayors, deputy mayors and councillors in Victoria, determination number 0.1/2022 of the Victorian Independent. I always struggle with this word.
Remuneration.
Yeah, but I'll get there. Remuneration Tribunal. And number 2, note that the determination takes effect from the 18th of December 2021, and I'm more than happy to read this third one out. Approve the allowance payable to the Mayor, Deputy Mayor and Councillors of Greater Shepparton City Council in accordance with the determination, this being the amount per annum of a Mayor, $96,470, Deputy Mayor, $48,235, and Councillors, $30,024.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sarley?
I'm happy to second that motion. Thanks, Mayor O'Keefe.
Thank you very much. Councillor James, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Under section 39 of the Local Government Act 2020, the Act, mayors, deputy mayors and councillors are entitled to a base allowance. Allowances for the mayor, deputy mayor and councillors are provided in accordance with a determination of the Victorian Independent Remuneration Tribunal under the Victorian Independent Remuneration Tribunal and Improving Parliamentary Standards Act 2019. On the 7th of March 2022, in accordance with section 23A of the Victorian Independent Remuneration Tribunal and Improving Parliamentary Standards Act 2019, the tribunal made allowance payable to mayors, deputy mayors and councillors Victoria determination number 0.1/2022. The determination applies to all mayors, deputy mayors and councillors. Council members on all Victorian councils. Greater Shepparton City Council has been assigned as a Category 2 council. Therefore, the value of allowance is in accordance with this category and are as follows. Position, and as I read out before, Mayor, the Mayor is 96,470, Deputy Mayor 48,235, Councillors 30,024. The determination takes effect from the 18th of December 2021 and provides for further scheduled annual increases to allowance values up until the 18th of December 2025. The determination sets a base allowance for each council member. The value of the base allowance payable to a council member varies depending on the role, mayor, deputy mayor or councillor, and the council allowance category assigned to the council specified in the determination. Additionally, in accordance with S39(5) of the Act, a mayor, deputy mayor or an individual councillor may elect to receive the entire allowance to which they are entitled, or to receive a specified part of the allowance to which they are entitled, or to receive no allowance whatsoever. Mayor, I welcome this increase, these increases for the mayor, in particular the inclusion of the deputy mayor's allowance as well, which it hasn't been in the past, but is now in this new changes from here onwards. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sarley, would you like to speak to the motion?
Very briefly, obviously, Councillor James highlighted the formal process that's taken place over the course of some time now to get to where we are. I mean, look, personally, we never knew this was going to come to us, obviously, the increase. So when it does, you take it for what it is, and no doubt publicly it can be seen as a lot of money. There's no question about that. Some of us are still involved in businesses and in current jobs and many other things, and contributing costs to be able to sit around the table, and that is our choice. Obviously, we know what we're getting ourselves involved in to a degree, and I guess support the increase, which then might encourage those that would really want to put their hand up to represent their community but can't afford to get away from work or sacrifice a day away or 2 days, whatever it might look for, and this might entice some other people to consider putting their hand up again and feel the reward is there financially to contribute to their family and other expenses that they obviously have to give up by sitting around the table. I guess, look, like what Councillor James highlighted, there was probably some informal chat as a group of councillors that, the Deputy Mayor does do more than a councillor to a degree, obviously supporting the Mayor, so that's a welcome increase as well. So, yeah, look, it's good, it's encouraging. Hopefully it brings out more than, 17 candidates next time, because it opens up other opportunities for people. So we'll see how we go.
Thank you, Councillor Sally. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Summer.
Thank you, Mayor. It's probably just more of a in principle objection, because it's likely that this will pass, but look, I agree it's a very tough 24-hour job that does potentially deserve more recognition, but I have to take issue with the size of the increase for the Mayor in relation to the others. I think it's going to increase competition for the Mayor spot for all the wrong reasons. Already, the Mayor spot is a highly coveted role, and too much time can be spent on personal politics around that time every year when it comes around to electing the Mayor. So increase of 100,000 to 100,000 could actually exacerbate negative behaviours and lead to dysfunction. It could even become a full-time issue, who's going to be Mayor, and that will distract us from more important issues that are on the table. We're very lucky to have a great Mayor at the moment. She absolutely deserves higher remuneration than regular councillors, but not all mayors are as active as the one we have right now. $100,000 is out of touch with the general population and could cause a rift between the mayor and other councillors. As I said, I keep mentioning that because I have a feeling that that is a very real risk. But also it could increase competition during elections. More people might put their hand up if they think that there's a prize at the end, which is more money. Again, not necessarily the right reasons. It could introduce party politics if they suddenly see that there's a bucket of money on the table, and it could price out the average candidate from even running in an election that has a lot of buying power behind it in advertising. I don't think it's smart. I don't know where it came from. I didn't expect it to be that large, and I hope I'm wrong about everything I've said. So I do not support it, but I just can't support it.
Any councillor wish to speak for the motion? Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe, and before I start, I'd just like to congratulate you and your husband. The manner in which you do your job 6, if not 7 days a week, and not an 8-hour day either. So it is a big commitment. I've been there. I know what sort of commitment it is. And the same with the deputy mayor that we have at the moment, and I think deputy mayors anywhere along the line, it is, especially when you're trying to hold down a normal job, you've got to find that after hours work. And so I think really the position of mayor deserves more than what's been allowed. If you look at in private enterprise, in corporations, where you've got a business that turns over 130 million a year with 64,000 shareholders and billions of dollars in assets, the chair of the day would probably be paid $300,000 to $400,000, and directors would be paid in excess of 30, more like 50, 100,000 bucks. So I see this, whilst it may seem a little bit higher than what you'd think, when you compare it against the private enterprise and the public service, this is okay. I don't see a problem with it. Just in relation, and I agree that the position, the higher pay, will attract, I believe, more people to the job, because people say, look, it's not a bad stipend, I can find some time to do it, and those people, it may attract a higher volume of people to go to the position. But in terms of mayor, it's not so much the money that the mayor gets, but it's the time, it's the allocation of time that is the important one. And anybody who's looking at standing for mayor would need to understand that not only will their business suffer, but their family and their personal time will also suffer. So I think it's timely. We didn't determine this, by the way. It was determined by a state government instrumentality, independent to us, and I think Councillor Sally said at the outset, we didn't even know this was coming. So, I think it's a good idea, and I think it's appropriate to the position.
Thank you. Would any other councillor wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Spinks.
Thank you. I do want to say, I fully support the councillor allowance being slightly raised, keeping in mind it's about $4,000, $5,000, so it's not going up wildly. I continue to count myself extremely lucky that I get to do this role that such a small portion of the population will ever get a chance to do, and I'm sure every person who's ever sat in this room will feel the same way. But it is, as much as Councillor Sully said that we sort of knew what we were walking into, nah, I had no idea. And I say that with much love. This role is...
You're the lucky one.
I am. This role is very demanding. It takes a toll. It is at times very thankless, and yet it's a dream. Like, you get to do it, and that's incredible. And the fact that people voted for you is absolutely amazing. So just the ability to slightly get a bit more money to cover the hours, the time, the energy that it takes to do this role, I do fully support. I can certainly say that for someone in my position, it does allow me to do my job a little bit better, but also have a family life. I don't super agree, Councillor Dobson, with all due respect to the idea that these roles must make us, all other aspects of our life suffer. I think that asks too much of the community elected representatives that are here. We're here because we love community. We shouldn't have to give up everything around us to do that. And I do think maybe local government asks too much in that. I think it's something that's just naturally happened. I do support the Deputy Mayor being increased. We've certainly seen how hard our deputies are working. They're right there supporting and being a part of it. And so I do support the increase, noting that that will increase from 48 to, I believe, about 52 over the next few years. So it's a decent wage, and certainly supports the number of hours many hours being put into the role as it expects. I do have an issue with the Mayor allowance going up so high. And I would like to absolutely clarify that this is about the role and no one who has ever sat in this role, because I'm really worried. I see the councillor role increasing as expanding the number of people that can do that role, but I think the mayor allowance increasing that much is actually going to shrink it back. But we've spent so many years trying to get it away from being one type of person, one skill set, or one whatever it is. And I worry that now being so high, it will raise from 96 to 107,000, which is far and above anything I've ever earned in my life, will expect with it a certain level of skill or of expertise or a certain level of background. Are we going to expect this room to be filled with, business people, CEOs, finance people that have that background? And is it suddenly going to knock out our tradies and hairdressers and nurses and community development workers and blah, 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 let alone if you had various other backgrounds? I'm just, again, noting the base allowance set by the state government. Like, this is not something that came from the room.
Do you want an extension?
Just slightly. Thank you. But I just do want to note, I have concerns that one end of this did what it was supposed to do and the other end undid it. So I think it will allow more people to run for council, but once you're in here, will you get a job, an opportunity to have a go at the top job? Because sometimes we just want to go, and I think that's been the vibe in the room before then, and I wonder if it still will be. And even if it's not our council group that consider it that way, are we setting up the future to start moving backwards rather than forwards? Anyway, thank you.
Would any councillors to speak for the motion? Councillor O'Keefe?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. As highlighted before, it was the Victorian Independent Remuneration Tribunal that set this forward. Again, we didn't know until it was announced. It's split up into 3 categories for the Victorian councils across Victoria, category 1, 2 and 3, and that's really based in which category you're in as to what population is for your particular municipality. Greater Shepparton fits into category 2. And, an allowance is an allowance, and it's not meant to be a wage. It never was meant to be a wage. It's just an allowance to be able to facilitate you through your role. We are here for and elected by the community. And no one campaigned or wanted to be elected based on the allowance. I don't think anybody wanted to do that. The time it takes from your personal life, from your work commitments, is not made up in an allowance, but it is a recognition of the service that you are entrusted with. And we all knew that prior to putting our hands up for that. For many out there, they always look at politicians, particularly federal and state, and say they're overpaid or, they're on the gravy train, etc. but I've worked with a lot of them, and the hours that they put in, including our mayor here, that the time and the effort they put in and their family commitment that they have to put in, the family becomes part of the role as well, is just incredible. And even in local government, you know, the allowance, you know, if people are thinking that that it's not worth what we are doing in the community, I certainly look forward to seeing their nomination coming up. The nominations are still open for the federal seat, I understand. Nominations will be open for the state seat coming up, and of course, council election in 2024. So I see it, like Councillor Sully said, as an opportunity for people to be able to maybe look at it and say, you know what, I can actually put my hand up now. Thank you.
Any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would the council wish to speak to the motion? Just a reminder too that it is a taxable figure there too. You have to pay tax on that amount. We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? So all those in favour? Against? Motion carried. And my apologies, I think I did forget to give the right of reply to Councillor James. Did you have a right of reply? I apologise.
All good.
Okay, so just clarifying that.
Division, please.
Division, all those in favour, Councillor Dobson, Councillor Fuller, Councillor O'Keefe, Councillor Brophy, I'm a bit tired, Councillor James. Against? You're right, against? Oh, sorry, you're for.
Yeah.
Councillor Summer, sorry, I got
Thank you.
by the comments.
All good.
Only Councillor
Can you remove the tick?
Doesn't determine an outcome.
All right. Go to page 51, item 12.1, the minor and major events grant round 2, 2021 to 2022. There is a recommendation also on page 51. Would a councillor like to move the motion, please? Councillor Sarli?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'll move the recommendation as a motion on page 51 of the agenda, item 12. Minor and major events grant round 2, 2021-22.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Brophy?
Thank you, I second that recommendation.
Councillor Sarli, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Very briefly, each financial year we have 2 rounds of grants available, and this was round 2, and we've seen 8 local organisations receive a total of just under $11,000. The total budget allocated over the financial year was $45,000. The grant are used to support events that contribute economically, socially and culturally to our community, and the broad range of organisations that have been successful, which are noted there within the agenda as well, no doubt contribute to those factors I just mentioned.
Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Just a couple of the organisations here that were awarded particular grants. Just like to point out a couple of them. In particular, the Shepparton Cycling Club. They really work their butts off out there. They work so hard to try and get events up, and it's been patronised. They've turned it around from where things were falling over. They didn't have volunteers. They were financially strapped. They've put in a grant. They're getting things done. Their activities, their promotion is really good, and I really applaud them for working so hard, and they certainly deserve this particular grant. Another one is the Shepparton Field and Game organisation out there. Just recently, a couple of weekends ago, they had their FITASC, the clay shooting event, the Oceania Championships, where we had competitors from overseas. Finally, the borders have opened and they were able to come over here. There was 300 competitors there, and again, the volunteers from people like Terry Masterson, Ray, who runs it from Geelong, and of course the major sponsor being Blasser and Danny Galea there. They were there on hand, and it was so successful that they're looking at further championships here, and also perhaps, you know, we are a shot of getting the world titles here in the next coming years. So well done to them for an investment of under $2,000 from council, and to hear the people that were staying in Shepparton, eating in Shepparton, accommodation, economically, it's just such a win, these particular minor and major grants. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Spinks?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Just to briefly say, this we had $45,000 allocated to the minor and major events grants program for 21-22, and it hasn't all been spent. So this is just a moment of, I don't know, I guess, knocking people on the shoulder or whatever that saying is, and saying, hey, if you've got a community, you know, tapping people, shoulder, that's way less aggressive, thank you. There's plenty, you know, there was still plenty of money out there that if you have an event that you need some funding for, we're here, we're ready to help. And if you have any questions, the team are there to help as well. So if there's something stopping you from doing it, please feel free to even just touch base with the council staff and they'll help you out to get where you need to be.
Thanks, thank you very much. Any councillors to speak to the motion? I'd also like to just point out the Sir Optimus group. I mean, that $500, we don't think it's a lot of money at times, but it's sometimes can be enough just to make them have an event that they can then bring community together. And I think it's a really important time at the moment that even these really, you know, smaller events are really happening. So yeah, well done to all of the groups. They all do great work, great community work, and it's great to see everything opening up. All right, we'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 56, item 12.2, Development Hearings Panel. There's also a recommendation on page 56. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'd like to move the recommendation that the Council 1 appoint Councillor Seema Abdullah to the Development Hearings Panel, effective on the 19th of April 2022, and 2, appoint Councillor Shane Sarley to the position of Chair of the Development Hearings Panel, effective at the 19th of April 2022.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Abdullah. Thank you very much. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor O'Keefe. The Development Hearings Panel, you know, is a delegated committee which is established by Council in accordance with Section 63 of the Local Government Act 2020. And its purpose is to consider various matters before the Planning and Environmental Act, the Greater Shepparton Planning Scheme and other relevant regulations. So the panel hearings come about, they're not set in stone as to the dates that they come about, but it's when the people who are putting in particular applications and they need to be looked at, and there may be objections, there may not be objections, and whether they can go ahead or not, and certainly before it gets to a situation where it may get to VCAT or whatever. So this is a really important hearing panel. Previously we had Councillor Rob Priestley on that, and unfortunately he's in absence at the moment, so we needed to make sure that when we put this recommendation forward, we had 2 councillors so that we've got 2 available at any time. So when these hearings become available, that at least one is available to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Very briefly, first of all, I would like to thank everyone for my nomination to this committee, and I accept this nomination, and I'm looking forward to working together with Councillor Sarley on this committee. Yeah, that's all.
Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would a councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Sarley?
Just very briefly, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Yeah, just obviously my fellow councillors for nominating me for the chair position, but obviously this will provide a much more streamlined process that hasn't been in place to date, so thank you.
Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 59, item 13.1, the adoption of lease and licence policy. There is also a recommendation on page 59. Would a councillor like to move the motion? Councillor Summer?
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I'll move that the council adopt version 1 of the lease and licence policy 19.POL1 as attached to this report.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Brophy?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I second that recommendation.
Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
This has been a very controversial topic that has been overseen by us for a very long time now, and I believe we have the balance right. There is a large financial impact across many organisations, and there are winners and losers in that formula, but this is an example of us being tasked to make a hard decision, and I'm pleased that this is a more formalised approach to leasing and licensing. I like to think that the larger clubs do have other resources and options for financial help if they are struggling, and our door is always open, but It's a long overdue policy. If we delay the policy, it just compounds all the inequalities that are in there already. It used to be quite ad hoc. Now, if someone comes to us and says, how do you justify charging us this for our lease or license, we can go back to this formula and say, well, actually, this is the same formula that we apply to everyone. So I'm supportive.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. So just going back a little bit in this particular policy is that the Vargo audit of the property team in 2019 identified that there was a lack of consistency in determining the rental amounts and the need for a lease and licence policy. It introduces a consistent approach for all leaseholders to determine the rental amounts based on the size of the leased area and the value of the building occupied, as highlighted by Councillor Summer there just before. Public consultation with the community leaseholders incorporated rental subsidy has been reduced, and it's been reduced twice in one particular category, Category B, from 1% down to 0.6%, and from the Category 1B, Category 1C, the leaseholders have had a decrease from 5% down to 2.5%. So the new rental amounts will be implemented as the lease expires. So for some clubs, that may not be applicable for 6 to 8 years before they come into effect with those particular changes. Council has listened to a number of submitters, and look, some people have actually won out in the end as well. Some community groups, some sporting organisations, when it's been readjusted, have actually had a decrease. And again, that'll come on board again when their lease comes up as well. Some have had an increase, and look, some of the ones that have had an increase have said to me, and they've looked at it and go, you know what, we were paying well below what we should have been paying. So there will be still some that feel that they are being victimised, probably not the right word, but being subjected to some pretty harsh leasing arrangements. But I tend to think that given that we have a provision there for financial hardship, if they were to come to the officers that they are under financial hardship, that would be looked at and would be taken into consideration as well. So given the consultancy that we've had, and probably ongoing consultancy that we will have with these particular organisations, I'm confident that we've struck the right balance now.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? The councillor like to speak to the motion? We now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried and opposed. Councillors, we turn to page 62, confidential management reports nil received. Item 15, documents and sealing nil received. We turn to page 63, item 16, councillor reports nil received. Item 16.1, councillor activities. Would someone like to move the motion, item 16.1, councillor activities for March 2022? Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'll move that the council receive and note the summary of the council's community interactions and informal meetings of councillors.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor James. Thank you. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, during the month to the 31st of March, Mayor O'Keefe, there was 48 functions that councillors went to outside their normal council duties. There was also 8 lots of briefings and, of course, the council meeting, total of 57. Now, if you take up the time that each of those functions take, there's a fair amount of time, and it just shows you how active that this council is. That means that on an average there's 7 functions per councillor throughout the whole month, so it's a fair whack. And the better part about all that is that there's been a diverse range of activities, and again, your good self have been to a lot of these, along with a few of the council as backup. So I congratulate councillors for putting themselves out into the community day and night.
Thank you. Councillor James, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, as I missed the first half of some of the activities in March. But, I look forward to every community function we go to, and look forward to, the engagement that we do have with our community. And I thank the community for inviting the councillors to these functions as well. a couple there that were really highlighted was, the Country Fire Authority, the championships. That was great. Councillor Samo, Councillor Brophy and Councillor O'Keefe went along to that, and it was just brilliant just to watch that. It was really an eye-opener. But, that and a number of other projects, and as Councillor Dobbs did, 68 or so in the last, couple of weeks. I suspect that there was a few that we didn't and we couldn't attend because due to COVID restrictions. And I'm pleased to say, I'm glad to say that will obviously be increased over the next 2 to 3 months. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we stay safe. But it's just great to be out there in the community, and I earn every cent of my increase of my allowance from councillors' fees. So thank you very much.
Any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would a councillor wish to speak to the motion? I'll just comment how great it is to be back out in the community and to have so many events on and such a diverse range, and business openings. There's so many things on. International Women's Day, even though it was different this year, we still managed to do it. We're still doing things differently, but we are also doing so much face-to-face again now. So it's just really great just to be back out in the community. There's certainly a sense of optimism, and I'm feeling it across the community. Things are getting better and we're all moving forward. So hopefully next month will be just as busy for all of us. We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried and opposed. Councillors, we now go to page 65, item 16.2, Council Committee Reports nil received. Item 16.3, Notice of Motion, Amendment or Rescission. We do have a Notice of Motion. Item 16.1, Notice of Motion 5, 2022 Audit of Public Transport Network. There's a recommendation there. Would someone like to move a motion? Councillor Spinks.
Thank you very much, Mayor O'Keefe. I'd like to move the recommendation to a motion that the council, 1, prepare an audit of our public transport network to be used as a supporting document when advocating for expansion of the public transport network within Shepparton, across Greater Shepparton and connecting regional Vic, and 2, include the need for further reaching and more efficient public transport when advocating to state government.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Abdullah. Thank you. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. So what I'm asking for today is simply an audit of our current public transport networks with a focus on our bus networks to better support our advocacy work in this space. After speaking with a number of key stakeholders, including bus network providers, community members, other regional councils and state government, I've come to understand that if we want to make change happen, then we need to do the groundwork, to be shovel ready, as we hear all the time. Anecdotally, we know that our bus network isn't fit for purpose within Shepparton, Greater Shepparton towns or regionally. We're an epicentre of activity, but unless you have a car, it's almost impossible to get around easily or conveniently. From Tatura or Murchison, you need to plan your entire day around a bus trip. A bus from North Mooroopna to GV Health can take over an hour and a half, and no buses run on Sunday at all. We've been a rapidly expanding town without a rapidly expanding public transport network, which is a failure of basic infrastructure to keep up with needs. And this is not a criticism of the current network providers, as they are doing a great job working with what they have. We simply need more. And the benefits of public transport are numerous and can be seen right across the board. To name just a few, environmentally they create less pollution, socially they encourage more active communities and have lots of health benefits, and economically they reduce the stress on road infrastructure, and studies show that local businesses benefit. Ultimately, I think we all know and agree that we need more efficient, more convenient and further reaching public transport and bus networks here in Greater Shepparton. And I argue that the key to achieving this is to do the groundwork, to understand where we currently stand and where we need to go. My intention from this audit is to use the resulting document to provide an evidence-based foundation for our advocacy work and to support any further strategy or design work that may need to be done. Ultimately, if every regional centre is asking state government for better public transport, what makes us stand out? It's by doing this work and having it ready to go to say this is what we want and this is what we need, and here it is in front of us. Accessible, convenient and efficient public transport is a priority for our community, and with state government advocacy work happening right now, there is no better time to take this important step. Thank you.
Councillor, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. First of all, I would like to congratulate Councillor Spinks for bringing up this important notice of motion. I wholeheartedly support this motion because, and I'm sure that everybody else also acknowledges that Greater Shepparton needs to have a much improved public transport network. in all my for the past few years, we have been raising this on many occasions in different roles. I've heard from community members in my different roles about this major disadvantage that our community has by not having well-covered and more frequent public transport network. We know that our young people are especially disadvantaged because they cannot access services, they cannot access opportunities. So it's a major barrier for their progress as well. And but the irony is that so far we have not been able to gain much traction from the decision makers. So yes, I fully support that we need to have an audit, and as Councillor Spinks has said, that we need to make our advocacy more evidence-based. And I would also like to say, obviously, as a part of this audit, we will get the picture of current state, but we also want to discuss and examine what is the future state, where do we want to go, and how should what should be the ideal public transport network like in Greater Shepparton. So I think this is a right step in the right direction, and I know that Council is already has its attention on this issue, but obviously there are so many priorities, so perhaps we have not so far not advocated as strongly as we could have or we should have, but with this audit and the following steps, which may include any kind of recommendation on the future state of our public transport network, I'm hoping that we will get some attention from the state government. Thank you, and I support this motion.
Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? The councillor wish to speak to the motion. Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Congratulations, Councillor Spinks, in bringing this one forward. This is a terrific notice of motion, and it really hopefully will provide us with a holistic view of this particular space. The audit will provide us with an informed knowledge of the transport links or the network that we've got there. And I know that previous councillors, including Councillor Dobson, has mentioned in regards to interlinking shopping centres and things like that, so we can actually look at it in a better way. Perhaps smaller buses, perhaps better environmentally friendly transport that we can get around. Quite often you see a number of the transports going around and there may only be one person sitting on it, and you think how economic is that when maybe a smaller bus service might provide exactly the same connectivity, yet at a better economical value. Not to take out of mind too our cycling strategy, which we could fit well into this particular audit as well, on the peripheral, so that we can see that with the public transport network and the cycling strategy, we may not even need complementary parking. It might be quite good. Certainly with the fast train going to get here, one thing we shouldn't take out of our mind also is our transport industry, and we do rely very heavily on that. And not detracting from that, we do need produce and goods to go to market, and we will still need that. But I think calling for and preparing this particular audit, I compliment Councillor Spinks on it and certainly support it.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor James. Thank
you, Mayor O'Keefe. Yes, again, I just would like to say thank you for Councillor Spinks for the nomination. I'll notice the motion. I've had a lot of community members, pose that question in regards to there are some issues with public transport. So I look forward to investigation of that in regards to what is happening. I think I would like to also look at the public transport after in the evening too as well, from after 5, after 6 o'clock at night, to find out what happens with public transport. So I welcome that inquiry too as well. I think it'll be a worthwhile investigation into our local public transport network, etc. And I think it's a great initiative, and it's something that we really should be considering. And thank Councillor Spinks for that.
Thank you very much. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Starley.
Thank you. Well done. It's good. I like where you're going with this. It's going to provide a much better insight, even for me personally as well. So I'm keen to see how things progress and the information that comes out and where we can take it as well. So congratulations on putting it up.
You might have been able to link your app. We'll come back to that. Councillor
Well, again, I'd add my congratulations to Councillor Spinks for this initiative. That's what councillors do. Could I just suggest that this audit may form part of a wider strategy that takes into consideration transit buses, as Councillor Brofer just talked about, around from shopping centre to shopping centre. It may take into consideration the changing views on car parking, on length and the cost of car parking. I mean, it's all part of, could be part of the strategy. And it also could be part of the expansion of Greater Shepparton and the outlying towns such as Yadukis and Taturas, as to see the interaction more between the towns due to this particular, you know, what this audit may bring up. So it's just a lot bigger than just, you know, what buses go where. I think and so I'd like to think that as councillors we might work on enhancing that strategy that you're putting up.
Okay, we now the council wish to speak to the motion. Councillor Summer.
Thank you, Mayor. Very happy to see this notice of motion. Well done, Councillor Spinks, for taking it to a meeting. Anything that can inform an improved active transport strategy gets a big tick from me. I understand that this is more broad-reaching than just at the local level, but locally we are flat, which obviously lends itself to cycling and walking opportunities. Our demographic has a low socioeconomic basis in much of this area, and a lot of those people are reliant on public transport, perhaps not owning a car. We have high rates of chronic illness, so access to services is very important. Access to the hospital, access to Melbourne services as well, because there's a doctor shortage, medical shortage here. We could become a 10-minute bus city. Like, at the risk of butchering the notice of motion with too much scope, we did just get the Commonwealth Games, so anything can happen, even a fast train. So I'm looking forward to see where this can go, and it's exciting. I look forward to reading about it in the advocacy documents to other tiers of government.
I can't be the only one that doesn't comment. And I will say that we have been, really working on this, and I know the bus networks are doing their best with the dollars and resources that they have, so I think we need to acknowledge that. It's definitely not them letting us down, it's being able to support them better and what that might look like. I'm sure they're also very interested in where this might go, so I think it's a really great continued conversation that needed to be prioritised, so well done for that. All right, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. On page 66, item 16.3.2, we have another notice of motion from Councillor Spinks. Notice of motion 6-2022, 5 years of local government funding Shepparton Central Business District. Would a council like to move the recommendation? Councillor Spinks, question.
Thank you very much, Mayor O'Keefe. I would like to move the recommendation to a motion that the council conduct a report on the Shepparton Central Business District of all local government funding over the past 5 fiscal years. The report to include all departments across local government, all programs, projects and in-kind allocations. The report will provide a clear understanding of what has been funded and allocated and be used to holistically collate and inform any future budget considerations and allocations.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Summer. Councillor Spinks, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you very much. So the purpose of this report is simply to give a full picture of what has been spent across the CB district over the past few years. This was really something that I wanted to put forward after, a couple of years in council and watching many projects play out and just wanting to have a better understanding. It's really just an informative report that I'm requesting. For quite a while now, we've been spending a bit here and a bit there with projects such as the installation of fairy lights and mall upgrades and various business grants, etc. And I simply want to look at all of the pieces together. Separately, each item may seem small, but what does the picture look like as a whole? I completely respect and understand that our CBD has been undergoing a reinvigoration period over the last few years. But with the mall redevelopment expected to be completed this year, I'd argue that it's time to take stock of whether our focus is limitless or if we have achieved what we set out to do. Triggered by the recent shopfront grant approvals from a previous meeting, being quite in Shepparton centred in the CBD, it led me to wonder if the CBD has become an easy option for these moments and ask if we are genuinely choosing the best fairest and most just locations for the way we distribute these opportunities. The audit itself will not judge whether it is good or bad, or any spending has been good or bad, but will better inform any future decision making that we must make. For instance, we know that a report and subsequent discussion is coming about complementary parking, and we cannot continue to consider those financial decisions in isolation. This audit will support us to make more clearer and more holistically informed spending decisions, and ultimately to better decide if these decisions are fair and just spending for the whole of Greater Shepparton. The Shepparton CBD is only one of many jewels in our crown, and we must be sure we are not polishing one at the expense of all others. I thought I was pretty good with that one. I look forward to seeing the results of this report and to be able to make stronger and more holistically informed decisions because of it. Thank you.
Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'll reserve my right to speak, thank you, Mayor.
Sure. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would a councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Brophy?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Again, congratulations on Councillor Spinks putting another one forward. Well done. I probably aren't not as enthusiastically supporting this one as much as the other one, even though I am supporting it, because I'm not sure of what the outcome may lead to and what it would look like. And I think sometimes comparing oranges with lemons is not quite the outcome that you're sort of expecting. Partly because some of the funding around Shepparton and the CBD, and in other areas too, that it can be partly funded by a three-part: local government, state government, federal government. So it's hard to sometimes differentiate between those. And largely there's a timing investment. So sometimes there may be a major project in Tatura which could offset it, 3 years ago, compared to something that's being done like in the Mal, or the former Mal currently at the moment. So I'm not sure whether we'll get the outcome or the response that you need, but certainly going forward and forecasting and getting a bit of a snapshot is probably a really good idea to have a look at that. I'm certainly for an egalitarian fiscal municipal allocation across. I just want to make sure that we don't jeopardise anybody in the ensuing period, but well done.
Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would a councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor James?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, congratulations to Councillor Spinks for this recommendation. This recommendation is in line and lines up very nicely with the proposal of the Prosperity Plan, which was an initiative by, and is an initiative by the KLU Institute, which our council signed on to support and to be supportive of this Prosperity Plan last year. That lines up perfectly with it in regards to the funding, the global amount of funding which comes to this region per year, and it's funding from both federal and state government initiatives. So in line what Councillor Spinks has captured in her recommendation, it lines up perfectly with that, and I think that that's something that we really do need to critically analyse: the budget, the finance which comes in our town, where does it go to, what's it spent on, and how best are those resources being spent to capture our community. And I think that that's what we need to look at. And this basically says we need to do more in that space. We need to be accountable for the funding which comes to our town. And I think Councillor Spinks has summed it up perfectly in that. And I think that we should fully support it. Thank you, Mayor.
Wish to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Oh, sorry, do you want to have your right of...
Not quite a right of reply.
Sorry, it's going to be your
reserved reply. I just wanted to say that it's a very clear request. Thank you for the notice of motion again. And I agree with Bro that the results can be skewed. We've had the mall upgrade, we've had Moore Street upgrade that might not give a clear indication of spend. And it's generally reasonable to assume the CBD of Shepparton may get more because that's where the population and services are concentrated. Small towns are very unique. We've heard from Marupna, from Tatura, they always want something, there's always something there. So if this is a segue into making sure that we're being more equitable, it's great. And I'm happy to support absolutely any notice of motion that is a request for data. So I think that's a responsible thing. Comparisons are always handy, whether we know it now or not. So, well done.
Okay, we'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, finally on page 67, item 17, urgent business not included on the agenda, nil received, and item 18, I declare the council meeting closed at approximately 5 minutes to 5. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.